Our Open Book, Open Mind series is funded through the generosity of the Montclair Public Library Foundation through its donors, as well as through grants and funding for the Montclair Foundation and Investors Foundation.
I know I'm going to try and make this quick because you're here to hear them. But they deserve all the accolades that I'm about to give them. So let me introduce these wonderful speakers here today. The Open Book, Open Mind series is about writers and their ideas. And today we get to hear from a very rare writer who took his inspiration from sources as diverse as graphic novels, hip hop, westerns, and biography to sell Netflix on the idea of a bulletproof black superhero way before Wakanda became a cultural phenomenon. We are so pleased Cheo Hodari Coker made the long trip from LA to join us tonight. Mr. Coker is the creator, showrunner, and executive producer of the critically acclaimed Netflix series Luke Cage. Great. Which some of you might know crashed Netflix system the day it premiered.
Yes,
Such
we did.
was the hunger for
Crashed it.
Crashed it. Because we've been waiting for this kind of superhero for a while, right? So Mr. Coker began his career as a hip-hop journalist, writing for magazines that included The Source and the LA Times. Well, that's a newspaper, but you know what I mean. He wrote the biography Unbelievable, The Life, Death, and Afterlife of the Notorious B.I.G., and he went on to write and produce shows like Ray Donovan and Southland, winning an NAACP award for his work on Southland. With Luke Cage, Mr. Coker has created complex roles for a host of talented African-American actors, and we are lucky to have two of these amazing actors here tonight. I feel like this is like extra. Okay, please welcome veteran of the stage and screen, Karen Pittman, who plays Inspector Ridley, on Luke Cage, and who was awarded a 2015 Theatre World Award for her role in Disgraced.
Yes.
Go, girl.
Thank you.
Go, girl.
And welcome Sean Ringgold, who plays Sugar in Luke Cage. You might know him from his groundbreaking role as Suge Knight in the Notorious B.I.G. biopic Notorious.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have a list of other things he's done, but I do remember him in One Life to Live as well.
Yes.
That was 7 years now. That was 198
I'm just
episodes.
saying, I might have seen that. That's all I'm saying.
I love you, girl.
None of these guests would be on our stage tonight without the help of our moderator, Montclair's own Gail Barringer.
Yeah.
Gail is officially line producer for Luke Cage, which means she gets the nuts and bolts of the show done.
Yeah.
Gail started in the business as a production accountant and worked her way up through the world of action-oriented network television to produce Law & Order SUV, Person of Interest, Luke Cage, and The Punisher. She is a trailblazer and a rare woman producer in the Marvel Universe. And thank you all so much for donating your time to this public library today, and we're big fans, as you can see. So let's hear from the speakers.
Well, thank you for having us. As I was explaining earlier, this is really a homecoming for me because even though I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and grew up in stores, every single summer since I've been 9 years old, I've spent at my aunt and uncle's place. I'm not going to reveal your address on Val, but but why don't we say near Watchung Plaza? So why don't we say every single piece of pizza that I've had over the last 30 years, I compare it against Mr. Dino's. And of course Applegate, and Montclair is one of my favorite places in the world. But of course I want to give a shout out to my aunt Valerie Wilson Wesley and my uncle Richard Wesley, who, as I'll explain, taught me everything that I know about writing and about drama and about pretty much whatever scenario I'm in. I always ask myself one way or the other, what would Val do? What would Rich do? And it's never failed me.
Well, it's good you're here. I'm so happy that you're here and everyone gets to meet you and you're back in Montclair where you should be visiting. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because I love this story so much, was how did you get Luke Cage off the ground? It's not that simple. Cheo had to go and pitch his version of the show. And you go into Marvel and he met with Jeff Loeb, who was the head of television creative. And my question for you is, how did you describe your vision of what Luke Cage should be that ended up becoming season 1?
Well, it was a couple of things. Well, first, I talked about pretty much the first superhero I ever met, which was my grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Bertram Wilson, who was a Tuskegee Airman. He flew with the 100th, the 100th Fighter Squadron and the 302nd. And so, for example, if you watch the movie Red Tails, the finale where they support bombers going to Berlin, he was actually on that mission, and he also earned the Distinguished Flying Cross twice, and pretty much flew every plane between the P-51 to the F-4, so all the way to P-51 Mustang all the way to the jet age, and so like he was the kind of guy where you would we'd be at breakfast, and by the time I was 8 years old, I knew like how to make evasive maneuvers. Like say somebody was on my 6, I knew that if I put my flaps up, they'd go past me and I had to shoot them down. He would like just like if you were flying a kite, he would talk about like lift and drag and like basically physics. The thing was that probably the biggest lesson I learned from him is he always said no matter what situation you're in, if you're nervous, wiggle your toes, because that's what he would do in the cockpit. But also the other thing that he said was that you can't ever really, if you're about to do things that people haven't really done, you can't think about the fact that you're about to be the first black person to do this or that. He said, no matter what happens, people are shooting at you, and you can't forget to fly the plane.
Right.
And so all these things were kind of in my head when I went in to speak to Jeff Loeb, because I always loved Luke Cage as a character, and I knew the opportunity that was ahead of me and that it was going to be a job a lot of people wanted. So what happened? I had a picture of him in his cockpit, which actually, if you look at my Twitter feed, the picture of him in his cockpit with the 4 swastikas, which are planes that he shot down. I took that picture with me and a Luke Cage action figure and the first issue of Luke Cage. And I just talked about just how meaningful the character was to me. And then at the same time, I also talked about what movies I kind of wanted to reference. So basically the way I pitched Luke Cage, this is what is called a high concept pitch, which is you basically compare a couple of popular movies that people have seen and say that this meets this. So what I said was, my vision of Luke Cage is City of God meets Belly as written by the writing staff of The Wire. And
Yep.
and the thing that was crazy was Belly was the one that really caught Jeff Loeb's attention, because I had no idea. Because in meeting Jeff, you would never realize this. One of his best friends in the world is Hype Williams. So that was the thing that really kind of took it over the edge. And we just had conversations, and we've been talking now for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2 seasons later.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I know we're here talking about writing and script writing and novelists and what kind of novelists inspire you. In the first season of Luke Cage, we have this great scene in Pop's barbershop where Luke and Pop, played by Frankie Faison, another Montclair native, were going through what they were arguing about their favorite books and their favorite authors. And were those authors inspirational to you? And was that your little way of paying homage to them?
Well,
on the show?
absolutely, because that's the fun thing is when you have, a fictional literary character like Luke Cage arguing with a friend about other fictional, characters. So, for example, I think the question in the scene was about who Luke's favorite fictional hero was, and so he refers, of course, to Easy Rollins because of Walter Mosley. So they talk about Walter Mosley, George Pelecanos, Richard Price, Dennis Lehane, Chester Himes, and Donald Goines. And the thing was that Pop argued that Kenyatta was his favorite hero, and then Luke argued that he didn't really like Donald Goines because Donald Goines is the most fascinating biography of almost any crime writer ever. Because in Luke's argument, he said that like he wrote about criminals and he died like one, and so it was just kind of like this way of just like dropping all these different Easter eggs, knowing that. My hope was that people, because watching things on Netflix, you can pause and like, I knew that there would be people out there that might actually literally just go right to Amazon and buy books or would think about things. So throughout the series, we have a lot of these moments where we kind of merge the Marvel universe with real life Harlem figures.
Yep.
And we talk about everybody from Percy Sutton to, people that you read about in Feds magazine, like Fritz or or Nicky Barnes. And because the interesting, fascinating thing about Harlem is the fact that it's pretty much Washington, D.C. and Las Vegas for African Americans in one place, because you have all these incredible cultural touchstones like the Apollo Theater, and so much music comes out of Harlem. And then in addition to that, it's also one of the political epicenters of Black people in terms of everyone from James Baldwin. Politically, I'm sorry, we want to talk about Adam Clayton Powell and Malcolm X. And then of course, in mentioning Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and how much of a literary tradition comes out of there. The fact that we shoot in Harlem, and the fact that historically Luke Cage is a Harlem-based character, one of the reasons that we're able to shoot in Harlem is because Gail made it possible in terms of locations and permits, and also impressing upon on everybody how important it was for us to actually
be there and to show Harlem, because that's sort of like an extra character in our show. It's just, you can't. It's hard to cheat that neighborhood. You can't really get the spirit of that neighborhood anywhere else but Harlem. So we were very honored to be able to shoot there as long as we did, and to return there, which is kind of tricky sometimes.
Yeah, but
do a recurring show.
It's so worth it. We opened with these huge shots of Lenox Boulevard, and it's just like you don't even see boulevards like that anymore. Just so wide and expansive, and it's just crazy because so much history happens there.
No, it's true. It's true.
Well, and the architecture of Harlem is specific to that part of the world. You won't see that architecture anywhere else. And the community of people that live there, from Caribbean to African American to African, it's fantastic, and different colors. And
a lot of color.
And then my grandfather and my grandmother actually honeymooned at the Hotel Teresa.
oh, wow.
And, he actually talks about the fact that you would walk down the street and you could run into Duke Ellington. You would see, people would just walk around. And so it also helped me think about, okay, if Luke Cage was a real person and he was based in Harlem at a barbershop, would people be running into Luke Cage? And that's kind of what we did in season 1, and definitely without revealing too much, we have a lot of that in season 2.
Well, you talk about cultural touchstones. There's also the Abyssinian Baptist Church, Reverend Al Sharpton. All of that stuff is a part of our current, cultural life in Harlem, too.
And then also the building where we shoot, Pop's Barbershop, which is actually near the corner of 118th and Lenox, is actually, if you watch the movie American Gangster, it's actually the same building. They use we use the basement part of that building, but they actually use the first floor. That they turned it into that diner where he's talking to his brothers, walks down the street, walks up, shoots Idris Elba, and then walks right back up. But yeah, so and one of our jokes is our prop master actually worked on American Gangster, and so the cash in Cottonmouth's office is actually the same cash from American Gangster. So we have a lot of little, there's certain things that are just kind of in jokes, but that's one of them.
Amazing.
And I remember when we were shooting out there, and the tour bus would come down the street, and they would say, "This is where American Gangster shot," and we're like, "We are Luke Cage." Luke Cage is shooting.
Right.
And we weren't even out yet, and everyone's like, "What?"
Well, that was the other funny thing about shooting season 2 was we were shooting on 125th Street, and so because of the popularity of season 1, the cat's out of the bag, and so Marvel's very strict about saying, okay, if anyone asks you what you're shooting, say that you're shooting a commercial, and so we were out there shooting the first episode of season 2. And one of the tour buses was there, and Marvel's there. And so as soon as the tour bus passed by, I said, "We're shooting Luke Cage, season 2." I started taking photos, and I was just like, what can you do? I mean, my culture was right there. Everyone knows he's Luke Cage.
Yeah.
My culture is shooting a commercial in Harlem.
So,
Can't really miss him.
But that's kind of the fun of it. Is the fun is the hiding in plain sight, but at the same time knowing that we have such a receptive audience, and part of it is knowing what we can reveal, and also knowing what we have to keep secret, and that's really just so much of our excitement about doing it all over again.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to ask all of you, Sean and Karen. After season 1 came out, what was your experience? You were a huge part of season 1, and then you got to see it. We all got to see, the first 2 episodes together at a big screening, which was exciting because it's not what you normally do with the Netflix shows. You're at home and you binge them, whether with your family or by yourself. So I wanted to ask, how did it feel for you to be part of the show and then witness or just experience what people would come up and say to you about it after it dropped?
Well, I do have to go back. I do have to go back to this thing that we were talking about with Harlem and with New York City. It's such a great thrill to shoot in New York City, and because it is the other character in Luke Cage. It is, in a lot of ways, it feels like his muse, because it is his home. So suddenly I found myself really attached to the experience of shooting a show in New York City, like Law and Order or all the other sort of TV shows that are iconic to this part of the world, to New York City. I was attached to it as a New York actor, as someone who likes to collaborate and work with actors from this part of the world and artists from this part of the world. I suddenly felt like I'm originally from Mississippi. I was raised in Nashville, so I suddenly really felt like a New Yorker, sort of in my bones. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I enjoyed on season 1 when I was in Harlem. I've been in Harlem for a long time. I live in Queens, but I'm always in Harlem, eating or having fun doing something. And it made my character. There was a scene that I had at the Chinese store.
Yeah.
Just knowing the neighborhood. That wasn't in
Right.
that was in Washington Heights, right? Was it?
Tip of Harlem.
Yeah, because we actually shot that in one. Yeah, it was 170.
But just when you're shooting in New York City and you know your demographic, it changes your character and how you act and how you feel. Because like if I'm shooting in Georgia or if I'm in LA, it's just not the same thing. When you're in New York, it's just different. You just
No, it's true. There's
just swag a little bit.
Swagger. I was going to use that word.
You
There's
deal with
swagger.
people differently, because
That's-
New York, New Jersey, we all the same. We tough, we rough,
It's
right?
true.
So you
It's
can just
so
check with
true.
somebody. Your character's just different.
And I think
enjoyed it.
that's like the characters in this. I think it's indicative of New York City and the people, the characters that live here. They all have swagger.
Definitely.
From Sugar to Luke to
And street smarts. You can't be from New York and not have some street
to
smarts.
Misty to Shays to really everybody has swagger. I really think that's part of the.
And that was kind of one of the fun things for me was, so Sean as he mentions, plays Suge Knight. He played Suge Knight in the movie that I wrote based on my book, Notorious. I co-wrote that with Reggie Rock Bythewood. And then I did some work on Straight Outta Compton, and Marcus played Suge in that movie. So the scene in Pop's barbershop where in Genghis Khan's when Luke reveals his powers, is both Shugs are in the scene. Because the Shug from Straight Outta Compton is the one he throws through the window.
Never done before. That was epic. When I put it all together, I was like, oh, Cheo, that's sexy, man. It's never in life. Think about it. Ever again will, two Suge Knights from 2 different films be on the same team. I was like, that's what I'm talking. I was so excited explaining that to him. I was like, this is hot.
And the other thing about it was of course, Sean steals that scene. Because, if you're not familiar with the scene, Luke, they're there to shake down Genghis.
Hold on a second. Look, I'm going to keep it 100 with you. Look, I wasn't sure how I was going to play it. But when I saw the language, he wrote it. I just acted it out. It was easy to bring life to that character. So my thing is this, you have this big man beating everybody down, all these incredible superpowers, and then all of a sudden, he just caught a bullet, he catch a bullet. What am I going to do? So I'm looking at these guys. I said, I don't even like these niggas. And I beelined out of it, and they cracked up. They laughed so hard, and I was like, you know what? This is so much fun. I was like, that was the best line. He gave me the shine. I just executed your plan, Captain.
But it was the execution of it, because what it does, without revealing more about season 2, it gave you a window into his character. Because one of the things that was important to me is that sometimes in other things that you see, like villains don't have any personality, character, story, drive. They're just villains. And my thing is that everybody has a mother or a father. Everybody has a reason why they are the way that they are. And so it was important to me that every single character have moments. So whether it's Sugar and you seeing like there's something, even though he's on the other side, that he doesn't like about what he does. Or even a character like Turk, who even though Turk is introduced in Daredevil, giving Turk a different side of his personality. Or, really where you see it the most, of course, is in Mahershala Ali's portrayal of Cottonmouth. Being able to have, all of those complexities, and then also even so for example, hopefully everyone here has seen Luke Cage before I get
Otherwise, it's spoiled completely.
before I spoil it. Okay, in episode 7, which is actually the episode where some interesting things or permanent things happen in Cottonmouth. That was also the
Real permanent.
the moment where we also introduce Karen's character, Inspector Ridley, who kind of starts off as an antagonist to Misty Knight, but eventually becomes an ally. And it was also another favorite sequence of mine because we got to use a Nina Simone song that I grew up with, Plain Gold Ring.
Yes.
And so, that's the thing of being able to mesh, but it was just perfect kind of like introducing a character and using that song and the way it's, that's what I love about the show. It's not just the fact that you get to, play with dialogue and with character, but also once you add the music to it, it becomes a whole other thing.
Oh, you talked about that Nina Simone song since Ep 2, and I'm like, we're going to get that song no matter what. I remember that.
Yeah.
Which is, I was going to bring up the episode with Method Man and how we did Bulletproof Love, which came out of Cheo's brain, and we made it. And it was one of those nail-biting last moments when we're like, are we going to get the song? When's the track coming? When's the song coming? And he pulled an all-nighter with Method Man. And they showed up the next day on set, and out came Bulletproof Love, which was just so. I had a tear in my eye when we filmed it. I'm like, this is so amazing.
The thing was Akela Cooper and Charles Murray wrote the episode, but of course, as a writer's room, we plotted it together. And the thing was another influence of mine, of course, is the Jimmy Cliff movie Harder They Come, and I knew that even though in this episode Luke was on the run, I wanted there to be a kind of a galvanizing musical moment. And so the moment is that even though Luke is a fugitive in this moment, he foils a robbery. And a robbery happens at a bodega, and Method Man happens to be there as Method Man. And so I explained both to Marvel and Netflix if this really happened. And, because the thing about the hip-hop community in New York, the rappers, you run into somebody on the train, you run into literally everywhere. And I said that if this happened in real life, there's no way that if he was going on a radio show that he wouldn't spontaneously make a freestyle about what happened. And so then, of course, everything in production is technical. So who's going to write the song, and where are the lyrics, and are they going to get approved? And I don't know, is this moment's going to work? So I got rejected by both Marvel and Netflix on that moment. And this is the thing that you learn as a first-time showrunner is you have to kind of pick and choose your battles. And, the one thing I learned is, like, sometimes with certain things, certain battles you're going to lose. But then the reason that you lose those battles is because then when there's one that you really need,
You fight for.
and
You fight.
you like dig your heels in on, and this was that one. And so basically what I said to Jeff Loeb was that, hip-hop, is spontaneous and happens at the moment. And trust me, if we get the right person, it will feel organic and it won't feel corny and it'll feel real. And the thing was it had to be the perfect balance, not only of rapper but also of actor. And I've known Meth or Cliff forever, really since like '94. Of course there's an infamous thing that happened with me and Wu-Tang, but Meth and I have always been cool. Like same with me and Ghost. And the thing was that like he had gotten so many acting chops on The Wire. I knew that he could pull off the acting side and the hip hop side. Meth is literally one of the best MCs ever. And so what we did was we're all talking about it. We had the script, and then so Meth is a huge comic book fan. And so, of course, he's up on like every single iteration of Luke Cage, Black Panther, you name it. And so we said, okay, like, he and I started talking. I was like, okay, basically, I just want you kind of, this is, I wasn't supposed to give him the script, but I gave him the script. And I said, like, let's talk about what you would say. And so he said, yo, so describe it. So, like, I said, okay, I need you to kind of talk about Luke Cage in a cool way and make it relatable, but at the same time, mention certain things that happened over the course of the year or course of the season. And then he just literally, just like, I want to say a few hours later, came up with, sent us back the lyrics. And then we got in the studio, and he recorded Bulletproof Love, I want to say, in 2 takes in about 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things where Adrian Young and Ali Shaheed Muhammad had already done the beat, but because they couldn't fly out from LA to New York, I had to produce the vocal, and that was I'd never done that. But the thing was having been in the studio so many times as a journalist, and because of the fact that I had a great engineer who also really helped me for another thing in season 2 I can't talk about yet, but for another musical moment that's equally as earth shattering. The thing, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. But the thing was the song just came together, and then once we got with Sway and Heather B, which grounded it in a certain reality, and Meth just performed that song. It just became this. It was this thing you could feel in the room that it was going to be something special, and that's really kind of what we try to do is just really capture these moments, and the music is always. That's to me where everything starts. I mean that's really how I structure a season. I mean like. I kind of call Luke Cage a bulletproof version of Lemonade. It's really just like a concept album with dialogue. It's just like you basically structure the entire series like an album, and then because the thing is like binging a series is really kind of the equivalent of what would happen in the 80s and 90s, like when Prince would come out with a record, like a Prince record, like Sign of the Times would come out, or Parade, and you would buy the record. This is, I'll tell you how old school it is, because you didn't download a record back then. You actually went and bought it.
Right.
You went and bought a record, then you went home, turned out all the lights, listened to the Prince record twice, and then you got on the phone and called your friends and talked about it. And so nowadays, flash forward 25, 30 years later, the only time you really find that now is when people binge shows. They shut things down, and then they watch the show, and then everybody talks about it on social media. And so it's in realizing that was, how things were consumed, that was really why, from a musical standpoint, I wanted the show to feel like an album, and why the music is so important, in addition to the acting and the writing, so that people kind of consume it all at once. So it has a certain feel to it. And the thing is that the actors elevate it to such a level where once you're adding the music, it just becomes this other spice that just kind of takes things, places
Definitely.
that, break Netflix. So.
Yes, that's what we do. Okay, so another question. It's one of my favorite sayings in the show that Cheo wrote in Ep 1. It's Pop always said, "Always forward, forward always." And I think, as you can tell, we all kind of like each other. And that was really the feeling on our set and with our crew. Everybody really got along, and we all felt that we were on something special, that we were telling a story that really hasn't been told, and we want to make it the best we can. So when Pop said those words to Luke, it became like the de facto theme to our show and the work that we would do every day. But Marvel also seems to be making a forward momentum. It's Black Panther, the Infinity Wars, and towards shows that are created by African-American artists. And I just, what are your hopes, all of us, for the future of superhero stories, of just stories in general? Like, what do you think? Where are we going?
Well, I mean, hopefully more competition. I mean, because the thing is, people, I constantly, every fourth question is like, what do you think of Black Lightning? And, And my thing is like I'm actually very positive about that show. 'Cause A, it's a good show, but B, the thing is that like we're finally seeing the level of diversity in television that has always existed in hip hop. Because A Tribe Called Quest wouldn't prevent you from liking Outkast, wouldn't prevent you from liking Mobb Deep. You know, in fact, when a hot record drops, you buy all of them, or at least back in the days, that was my feeling about it. And so that's also my feeling about, you know, the popularity of Black Panther helps us the same way that we also, you know, helped Black Panther from the standpoint of
That's right.
by introducing hip hop in the way that we did, by the Wu-Tangification of the Marvel Universe. It makes it easier when Ryan Coogler, you know, is having the conversation saying, "Look, I want to use Too Short, and there's going to be a Public Enemy poster in the background." You know, and we showed that the Earth didn't come to the end by having Biggie and by having a lot of real hip hop references in the show, so it makes it easier. And the same thing in terms of the success of Luke Cage. I'm sure, even though it's a competition, like I'm sure it made it easier for a show like Black Lightning, you know, to get greenlit. And so all this stuff is really just kind of the fruition of a lot of you know, the hopes and dreams that when I think about my Uncle Richard and his generation of screenwriters and directors. Of course, I'm going to put Rich on blast because he wrote Uptown Saturday Night and Let's Do It Again. And it was the hope that the success of those movies would open more opportunities for African-American writers, African-American directors. And so the first spark you saw was with Spike Lee and John Singleton in the late 80s, early 90s. And, you know, and now you're seeing everyone from Ava DuVernay to, you know, Ryan Coogler to George Tillman. I mean, there are just so many directors and so many projects. And so it's kind of the same hope and dream that, you know, rather than it being like an exclusionary thing, you know, we kind of consider our show, you know, inclusively Black, meaning that we don't water down the culture, but we introduce people into it, and it's like everything else. So they find that they want more of it, not less. And the fact that, you know, we're a part of this movement of opening up African American culture to the world, I mean, I think that's really just the biggest hope, honestly.
A Misty Knight Inspector Ridley series,
I would love that,
perhaps?
actually. I'm so glad you mentioned that. One of the things that I was going to say about that Cheo was talking about was I am so interested in seeing, inherent to the idea of Luke Cage, is that it's an African, we're fortunate enough to have a African-American male gaze. What does the African-American man see when the camera is going through New York City and you're seeing what Luke Cage sees? And what I would love to see is what an African-American woman sees. I want to see the African-American woman's gaze. I want to see what she sees. I saw Mudbound. I saw Dee Rees's movie. And everything Dee saw, I was looking at. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is what I look at on the day-to-day. So what I'm hoping from the variety of stories that we are now seeing from people of color, that we get our opportunity to see and hear the voice of the African-American woman and what she looks at and what she feels. Because at the end of the day, what we all look at is our humanity. That it doesn't. The race and gender story is part of it, but what we really are looking at is a reflection of ourselves in the world, whether you're white or Black or female or male. You know, the how of how we look at it makes a difference, though, right? So what I hope to see is more African-American women telling stories and seeing what they see.
Good.
Yes.
It's on you, big man. What do you
I
want
know,
to see?
yeah.
For sugar? You know, one thing I could say, what I love about, you know, this story and the fact that when I started, you know, with the character, Cheo, you know, when you get on set, people can see who you are and they can say, hey, maybe I can go here with the character. That he wrote comedy in for me, and most of the time my characters in which I play, usually, you know, tough guys and posing, but sometimes the big teddy bear, because they say, you know, I'm really a soft guy inside or whatnot, like a Pillsbury Doughboy or something like that. And when the fact that I can have fun within my characters with the writing that the writing style and the language just rolls off so smooth and it's effortless. I'm like, I just want to continue to keep laughing and making other people laugh because I love happiness, I love laughter, and with all the negativity and bitterness going on in the world, I think what we need more of is laughter and happiness, and that's if he can continue to create that and write that, I'm more than happy to deliver it. So I just want to see more of that, more happiness, more laughter. There's always a bunch of this. I could be tough. I can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But what's more funny, you see people laugh and, see that emotion pour out of them. That touches my heart. And if I could see more of that, that'd be a true blessing.
I think also but to your point, the part of the success I think of the show is that we're able to capture the process and how we view the humanity of these characters as a group of people. Like what you see a lot of on Luke Cage, what makes this show unique is the process that has been created, and we give a lot of credit to Cheo because that's where it goes. The showrunner sets the tone, right? So when you come to set, the workaday thing that we do every day is we try to get in there and shake it up with each other and do the thing. And part of what you see on when you're looking at your whatever Apple computer is you see that genuine bond between us as actors and storytellers and collaborators and artists and photography, DP, and AD, all of that chemistry goes into what you see when you look at our TV show, and it really, really matters. I mean, it really does. That humanity, those characters, it's a real thing. What you're taking part in. So.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think and I think the experience for me, and I can speak for a lot of the crew, it's always such a pleasant set to be on. And it's always such a good energy. I mean, just because we're excited to see what's next in terms of the scripts. We don't know, we kind of know, but, we get them and then we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to have, Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. Just to be there.
Right.
What an honor. To watch them rehearse, and then when we're there and we're filming that scene in the finale, just the energy is nothing but up. I mean, it's just an incredible
And when you get
vibe.
the script, for me, I'm always like, ooh, what's Alfred gonna do with this? She gonna turn this out, and she always does. It's always, table reads are always great, you know what I mean? You just don't know what's gonna happen with the script.
The table reads are, for me, though, one of the most important elements of the entire process.
Yes.
Because whether I write a script or whether one of my fellow writer-producers writes a script, we don't know whether or not it actually works until the table reads.
Right, sits in the voice of those
I've been on some shows that that won't be mentioned where the table reads are so boring I've literally fallen asleep during the table reads because the actors are just kind of just reading the lines, as opposed to something like when we do a Luke Cage table read where everybody brings their A game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it's literally like you're watching the whole thing unfold. It's almost like a second prep, because then that's when we're able to adjust the dialogue and some of those happy accidents and moments that you weren't expecting, that when you see it up on its feet, you're able to adjust, and then it just takes on a life of its own. Mm-hmm. And then that's really just part of the challenge is that there's planning it in the writer's room. There's the work that Gail and I do together in terms of saying, okay, we can afford this, but can we afford that? Or can we collapse this scene into this? And then there's the magic that happens that once we finally get some consensus, between ourselves and the two companies we work for, finally when the actors take it to the next level. And so it's really, you just really feel that unity in ways that you don't really feel on a lot of other shows, because we've had experiences, all of us, where you want to say that it's there, and trust me, it's not there. But when it's real, it's always there, and that's the thing that's always been great about everybody on the stage, and also our compatriots who aren't here, is the fact that every time we see each other, we're always happy to be together.
Right.
We're always happy to, because it's just the moments of getting back together and doing this. It's really, no matter what the pressure, it's a lot of fun.
And it's inspiring. You never want to get on set and mess up with Alfre Woodard, doing her thing. You never want to. You want to look your best. You want to have yourself together. You want to inspire because you are inspired, right? And that's a part of being on a great team like this.
One thing that I can say that I can truly embrace for season one was incredible. There's one word that can define it for me. It was just magical.
Magic.
You know, you're in your dressing room and you got Alfred across the hall. I'm like, I keep it 100. Sometimes I'll be in my room, I'm like, oh my God.
I know, right?
This is really happening. Oh my God, yo, that's my man, both sons of man out here. Like, but then I come out and cool as a breeze. And I was a celebrity bodyguard many years before becoming an actor. And I'm not starstruck, but I've learned how to appreciate people's work and what they bring to the table. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating other people's, accolades. And when I was working with Pop, I worked with him. He was my father on One Life to Live. He was my father on One Life. So when we ended up on Luke Cage, I was loving him even more. Like, yeah, it's my dad. We didn't have a scene together. It was just so great to see people that I worked with. But then I was real starstruck off of Alfred.
Alfred and Tanya
my mom was like,
Richardson.
you were working with Alfred.
Right.
My mom was like, so tell me. I'm like, Mom, I can't say nothing.
Frankie Faison. Because representation matters. It really matters. It's important to see yourself not just reflected in the makeup room when you're on your way to set, but also on the screen, on Netflix, and in as many different ways as we can articulate ourselves in the world. It's important.
It's magical.
Well, then it's just it's funny. It's like I'm having these flash of memories of like scenes. The first 2 episodes that we filmed were really challenging. They're always challenging because there's a lot at stake, and you haven't really set the tone of the show. You don't really know if it's going to work, and you have to make decisions that are going to last the entire run. And I remember how we were on set, we were running late. And it was this moment in that basically bookends episode 2 where the kid has the gun on Luke Cage. And it was funny because even though the kid was supposed to be tough, he had a very frail arm, so he could barely hold the gun. And we were out there long enough, so he could barely hold the gun up. And we were running against time, and Gail was already getting heat from New York to shut down production. So she's screaming, "We need to get this shot now!" And it was one of those times where I was just like, "We're gonna have to go over, and I'm gonna get the phone call, but we're doing it. We're here." And it was the moment where basically Luke is looking at Crispus Attucks, and he says, "Always forward, pop forward, always." And the shot that we were getting is one of those things where it's like we were under so much pressure to not get the shot, but now when you see the finished product, you cannot imagine that episode without that moment. And so that's the thing, is like, you can't please everybody, but you have to know what's important, and you have to live with people being angry sometimes, because when you have to get what you're only going to get one shot to be there. Right. And so that's one of the things that you try to capture. Another favorite moment for me was when we were on the roof of Daddy Grace's church, and it was this moment. You can barely see it because it started raining out there. And Alfred's there, Mahershala Ali is there, Theo Rossi's there, Warner is there, and Turk, Rob Morgan, he kind of invades the scene. And what was the chemistry with the actors was so magical, even though it was raining. Like, I forgot that I wrote the scene. I just was watching it like it was unfold, and it was one of those moments where it's just like you just kind of forget what you're doing, and just wait a minute, I wrote that line, but it was one of those magical moments when kind of everything kind of comes together, and you just have to kind of let things happen. I remember, Mahershala, through about 25 takes, because Paul shot it all these different ways, and he kept saying, "My name's not Cottonmouth," like real flat. "My name's not Cottonmouth." I'm like, I need for him to kind of say it, and Mahershala's getting angrier and angrier, and and Paul said, like, just trust him, just relax. And what I realized from an acting standpoint, he was working his way up to it. Mm-hmm. So then when he goes, "My name's not Cottonmouth," and scared everybody on set, we're like, okay, like we got it.
Got it.
So whether it was him channeling his anger at me about prodding him, like, "I need this," or whatever it was, you just learn to just kind of like let the whole thing unfold. Mm-hmm. And so, you always have to be prepped, but when you're prepped, that's when actors take whatever's written to the next level, because then you can play, then you can have fun, then you're able to capture these moments that make things real.
That's when the magic happens.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then we all go home and we're like, that was an amazing, amazing day.
Yeah.
No, I think,
No.
go right ahead.
Sure.
Great.
Big fan of the show. This is for Cheo. So you talked about Netflix binging and the culture, and I find that when people binge shows, that each episode kind of runs in kind of like a slurry of just things that happen. So as a writer, knowing that your audience is going to consume it in like one shot, how do you work to keep every episode like unique and significant in the mind, so it doesn't just become one extended movie?
So the secret is like, well, for me, I do the first sequencing of basically picking the song titles. So season 1 it was Gangstar. Season 2 it's already been revealed. It's Pete Rock and Sail Smooth. And so it was just kind of a trick. It was actually a trick that I used when I first pitched. You know, the moment with Jeff Loeb that Gail asked me about. I was so nervous going into that room. Like I knew that from pitches that have failed, I wanted to be able to pitch a season just in case they asked me for it. And so what I did was, because I'm a huge fan of Shonda Rhimes and of Scandal, and of also really of originally of Grey's Anatomy. And on Grey's Anatomy, all the episodes are named after popular songs. And so what I did was I just basically, just to kind of calm myself down, just kind of looked for thematic titles, arranged them a certain way, and said, okay, if you have something called Moment of Truth, what thematically scenario could I come up with, Luke, for this, and then just kind of doing it like that. And so you kind of, I always think of the entire thing as an album. And
Just
so
going to say that it's kind of like
you're already kind of sequencing. You from having written musicals to a certain extent, you work backwards. You record the songs first, and then you write around it, as opposed to the way that I do it, so it feels more organic. Like Purple Rain is probably a movie I steal from all the time, because the thing is that you watch Prince through the movie write Purple Rain, so that when he finally performs it, you feel as if you were a part of the composition. But the only way that they were able to do that was they had the songs first, and then they worked the script around that. And so the thing is that the other thing in terms of the structure is I basically do it where it's episode 1 is act 1, episode 2 is act 2, episode 3 is the third act, and then the fourth episode or the end of the third act is always some kind of thematic twist. And then if you do that every 3 episodes, you have a certain level of rising action, so that by the time you get to the finale, hopefully you're at a place where everyone is happy. Although people are still pissed at me for Cottonmouth, but but what can you do?
Anybody else? Hi, I'm Angela Trotter. Great show. I love the whole season. Congratulations on season 2. I live in Harlem. I've been in Harlem for over 15 years, and I've seen the change in culture. Mm-hmm. So for Gail and you, Cheo, how do you maintain the integrity of Harlem? I guess I'm kind of giving away without going into a futuristic season 2.
Well, I mean, the thing is that you talk about it. Like, I mean, we incorporated the gentrification of Harlem as a plot point, so that the actors, the characters, I'm sorry, with Mariah Dillard and her cousin Cottonmouth are talking about the changes. In some ways, very basically figuring out ways that they can capitalize on it, but then at the same time also have different characters in the narrative commenting on how things have changed. Like there's this one moment in episode 9. It was this interrogation scene with Misty Knight with a police psychologist, where they start talking about, it's kind of was our version of talking about Harlem restaurants, the same way that we talked about books in the second episode. So we mentioned like M&G's Soul Diner. We mentioned Copeland's. We mentioned places that people from Harlem would remember that are gone, and talking about how things have changed, but doing it in a way that people that because I still miss M&G's. Yeah, like it was
fried chicken.
having these little moments that people, you know, that are familiar with the neighborhood would be like, yeah, like I remember that. You know, and the perfect example, like if I was setting Luke Cage here, then I'm definitely going to mention Applegate. I'm definitely going to mention Mr. Dino's. You know, like you just try to find these things that kind of keep things real and make it so that it reflects, even in a fictional standpoint, like the reality of where you're filming something, and also just constantly trying to find ways to put the neighborhood visually, you know, inside of the show.
It really is. It's important for us when we're location scouting too to shoot all over Harlem. And yes, there's so much gentrification and so many new places that you want to show, but then we really love to be in the heart of, you know, old Harlem in a way, and always be at the parks and just like, look, this is where we are, and we go everywhere in Harlem, and you guys are fantastic. So we always make sure we don't want to upset anyone. It's hard when a big film company comes in and shoots in your neighborhood and takes your parking, and it's a pain in the neck. But we respect the neighborhood, and I think it's been a great relationship, and we hope to continue.
And yeah, and then also, of course, we also find ways that, you know, to mention like Boulevard Bistro, which is, you know, probably my favorite restaurant in Harlem, in addition to the Red Rooster, and, you know, just, you know, and having places that people recognize, because when people see it filmed, it makes them want to go, you know. So we always, in ways big and small, try to give back.
Do you ever think you're going to make a book?
About Luke Cage?
Uh-huh.
Well, Luke Cage is based on, they're actually, luckily enough, there are about 150 to 200 books of Luke Cage, because it comes from the comic book. In terms of a book based on our show, who knows? You know.
A book with like a nice playlist.
Yeah,
attached.
you know,
Kind of is its own. It's another iteration, evolution. It feels like almost of the comic book, right? It kind of is its own book in itself, story wise.
Hello, I'm sorry. My name is Cedric. It's going to be for Cheo again. How the first season was, it was amazing, and how we explore, you know, all the other characters and everything. How is it? Is it very complicated writing about a bulletproof hero? Because just like Superman, a lot of people don't like Superman because they think he's boring and he can't be hurt. Mm-hmm. But do you, without giving away what happens in season 2, do we explore the complexities and how breaking down what it means to be a hero emotionally? Or, I'm sorry.
There's two things. Okay, there was a production meeting. We were filming episode 7, and we were talking about the fact that, like, or Jeff Loeb mentioned that very fact. I mean, how do we show Luke's vulnerability? There's always bullets bouncing off him. Doesn't that get boring? Why does anybody shoot Superman? And I said, Jeff, I will never get tired of seeing a bulletproof black man.
Right.
You know, like every single time it happens, even though I know it's not going to hurt him, I just get this thrill of the bullets bouncing off him. So it's you know, it's a guilty pleasure, but it's just one of these things that we kind of made into like a theme, because with a lot of bad guys, they just can't resist. It's really the way we justify it is people just there's no way he's bulletproof. I have to see it. This is all I got.
Try it.
Let me try, you know, and then that's kind of Luke's frustration. It's like, come on, really, you know, really. And so for season 2, without getting too deep into it, because we will be dropping a trailer relatively soon, like a bigger trailer. One of the main themes of the season comes from my favorite Mike Tyson quote, when Mike Tyson said, "Everybody's got a plan until they get hit." You know, and so the question is, if season 1 was really about the evolution of a reluctant hero, season 2 is about who is Luke Cage as a man? What makes him tick? How does he handle defeat? You know, is he able to kind of embody, you know, like another one of my favorite sayings, it's actually a Japanese proverb, which is, you know, fall 7 times, rise 8, you know, which is, what can you go through, and then how do you get up, you know? And that's just one of the things that, you know, that's kind of the thing with long-term storytelling. And sometimes people get impatient with it, but, you know, because we got a lot of criticism in particular, there was this one writer, Angelica Jade Bastian. She wrote some of our harshest reviews, but the reviews were so beautifully written that maybe I'm sadomasochistic, but I loved reading her criticism, even though it was just harsh sometimes, because it challenged us in saying, she said some pretty harsh things about the show, but the thing is that she wasn't wrong. And so our challenge with season 2 was, okay, like hearing some of these criticisms and thinking about Luke Cage in particular and who it is he is, like, a lot of things you do is because you're really trying to set up a world and set up a character, but then that's when the second season, and knock on wood, subsequent seasons help you really expand, what a character is and in the surrounding world. And that's really what we did a lot of in season 2 is expanding everybody's characters. So you're going to definitely not only see different sides of Luke, you're going to see different sides of Sugar, different sides of Inspector Ridley, really different sides of everybody. And that's really kind of the joy of getting a second season in the first place.
So as a black geek of a certain age, you pretty much resign yourself to a lifetime of disappointment. And you're not going to see the black stuff, and you're not going to see the geek stuff. You're going to, if anybody remembers like the old Flash TV show or the Captain America, like I was just excited to see that. So first off, I never thought I was going to see Luke Cage. And to see it the way that it was done was mind-blowing. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
And but then my question is, what do we have to look forward to, and does it feel like in a Luke Cage, Black Panther reality that maybe some other things are opening up? And literally, like this afternoon, I was like, wow, that Octavia Butler movie might ever happen. I mean, I before this afternoon, I never thought it was possible. But now I'm like, wait, maybe somebody would actually greenlight that, because black stuff, geek stuff, actually is making money, and a lot of it, and that's where it all comes from. But do you think that that's taking place?
Well, absolutely, because I mean the thing is as also as a fellow black geek of a certain age, 45 in my case. The thing is that when the first teasers came out for Black Panther, my greatest hope as a fan was that they would get Wakanda right, because Wakanda historically in the comic books has always been the most technologically advanced, location in the entire Marvel universe. And so the thing that was interesting was seeing that come to fruition, and then seeing that they spent the money to get it right, and then once, of course, seeing the movie and seeing that Wakanda was correct, beyond just the incredible script that Ryan and Joe Robert Cole wrote in the movie that they made, it really kind of, the success of it gives me hope that there will be more, because the thing is that the one thing you learn about Hollywood, it's not about black or white, it's really about green. And the thing is that a lot of these decisions that are made, these cold, harsh decisions, have nothing to do with culture and everything to do with the success. And so again, with everything, I always liken it back to music, because I remember in the 80s when Michael Jackson did Thriller, that it's hard to believe, but it took them almost a year to get MTV to play any music videos from Thriller. In fact, CBS Records had to threaten to boycott the entire network in order to get them to play Billie Jean. And once they played Billie Jean and beat it, of course, the rest is history. And so a lot of it is that you still face the same battles of, black travels. Because that was the first thing that they used to always say about why you don't want to make these truly big budget African American themed movies, because they wouldn't do well overseas. And when Black Panther becomes the first movie to be shown in Saudi Arabia in 30 years, that's no longer the case. So a lot of what it is, it's lucrative now. And so there are going to be a lot of things that are going to be in development that might not have been in development before because they see the audience, is demanding that. And, the thing is like there's so many reverberations from, everything from Black Panther, Luke Cage, Black Lightning, to even Beyonce's set at Coachella, where you're seeing the benefits of being like what I call inclusively Black, which is basically showing things that come from the depths and the depth and the breadth of our culture, but at the same time pulls people in to be more interested in it. Like for me, that's always what movies have been about. Like for example, it's like I don't know anything about heroin or Scotland, but Trainspotting was always one of my favorite movies because the best directors just pull you in. I remember as a kid, one of the movies that really influenced me was Gandhi, because I remember like going, I must have been 11 years old or 10, and I went to the movie theaters, and it's like you see this guy, of course, the movie begins with him being assassinated, and then all of a sudden, and of course Gandhi is, wearing his traditional garb, and then the next thing, bam, you're on a train, and he's wearing a suit, and he has his hair, and he's a lawyer. Like, what story is this? And then you follow his entire life story, so that by the time you get to the end of the movie, and he's about to be assassinated, you're devastated by it because at first it's he gets shot and he gets killed, but by the end of the movie, when you know what's going to happen, you can't stop it. It just, as an audience member, I basically stole the structure of Notorious from Gandhi. It was the same thing, was knowing that people didn't really, there were going to be people that loved, Notorious B.I.G. So when you start the movie off with him getting shot, that was kind of the thing, was like, okay, why are we going to start with that? We know this. But then when you learn the life of the person that you're watching, when you get to the end, all of a sudden you're emotionally involved. And that's really the thing that any movie about anything does, is you get emotionally involved. And that's it's just the opportunity to tell stories, to get people emotionally involved and not think about limitations, because there are no limitations. It's just good storytelling one way or the other.
Right. Being on the journey.
Hi. Two real short, quick questions. Season one about Luke Cage was Gangstar episodes, and you worked in a couple of lyrics. Lemonade's a popular drink, it still is.
Yeah.
With season two, without giving too much away, can we expect some Pete Rock and CL Smooth? And the follow-up question to that is, for season three, do you have any ideas, if there is a season three, if there is a season three, which I hope there will be, do you have any ideas as to what artists you would like to use for the episode titles for that?
Okay, so I'll start backwards. For season three, we need, hopefully season two will be successful enough to merit a season three. So fingers crossed on that. And to reveal the artist, if we do get a season three, it's just too early. First, hopefully it'll get ordered. In terms of P Rock and CL Smooth, we use the song titles. We don't have any, dialogue cameos like we did with season one of Luke Cage, but we have some musical artists that once we announce them, I think people are going to be really, happily surprised, because we have some legends. We had a couple of acts where as my actors can tell you, it's like they just came out and they were just shocked, and they were just like they couldn't they basically broke character, and they were like,
Yes.
With one moment in particular, I've never seen, phones are banned on Marvel sets. I've never seen so many phones of people from the entire crew breaking that rule and taking photos of certain people that will.
I have to keep my hand over my mouth. So.
Yeah, we've got some really great stuff musically coming up. Absolutely.
I've never seen so many cast members like, can I be in that scene? Or, I'm going to come to set today. Oh, are you?
Yeah. It was crazy.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I am interested and I'm a big fan of Luke Cage. And I was wondering, along with Luke Cage, are there going to be any collaborations with Black Panther, with like Iron Fist or anybody else in the show with Luke Cage?
Iron Fist, yes. We have a great moment with both characters in season 2, kind of continuing some of the chemistry you saw in Defenders. The Black Panther question, which has been coming up, I've gotten it. Ryan Coogler's gotten it. It's gonna be up to higher powers, whether or not that bridge happens. But luckily, in the comic books, it happens all the time. So until questions like that are answered, at least there's some great runs in the comic where you see T'Challa and Carl Lucas connect in a lot of cool ways.
It'd be fun.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and then we're going to get to the signing outside. Does anyone else over here?
Up front.
Hand. Sorry, right here.
Hi, my name is Wilson Christopher. Just in the age of digital media and waning attention spans, do you see a time where a show you might have a dramatic show? You talked about your 3-act format, but kind of doing it with 3 episodes. Do you see a time where maybe the shows won't even be hour shows because you don't have the advertising, you have the binge watching, so not Luke Cage, but just future shows that you might write that are actually shorter, 30 minutes, dramatic shows?
Well, I mean, the thing is like 2 of my favorite comedies on air right now aren't really comedies. They're almost structurally dramas. One is Atlanta, and the other, of course, is The Last OG. I watched The Last OG. I watched them both, not live, but I actually buy the seasons from Amazon, so they're presented commercial free. And the average episode of The Last OG is 20 minutes. 22 minutes because there's no commercials, and it's incredible just how fluid and fast the storytelling is. And even though that show is incredibly funny, it's like it has a lot of dramatic moments. And so, and Atlanta especially, like Atlanta's barely funny anymore, but it's so brilliant. It's really a drama. It's what we as showrunners call a Trojan horse, which is like you kind of sell the network on one thing, but what you're presenting is something different. And when the audience kind of connects with it, you can do anything you want. And that's really, to me, why I love what Donald Glover has done with Atlanta, is the fact that he's able to bring so many different elements of the Black experience in ways you've never expected to see into a show. I mean, so I think what I'm saying is like you're going to see different types of shows in different formats much quicker, and then but at the same time you're also going to have traditional formats, because the thing is that the walls between television storytelling and filmic storytelling are getting thinner all the time, to the point where people would rather spend 12 or 13 hours with a character they love than 2 hours with a character they kind of like, which is kind of pretty much the strangest evolution of how things have changed, but they really have changed that much. You had one question up front.
I did. I mean, I guess my question was, I've always wanted to see a different backstory for Storm from the X-Men. Like, I've been waiting, like you should be in that, Storm. And I agree. So I'm just wondering how closely you have to adhere to the Marvel universe, how closely you have to adhere to the comic book when you're creating a world. It seems like you've gone quite far, but I'm wondering if there are rules or if you just sort of have carte blanche to create.
Well, again, in the very first meeting that I had with Jeff Loeb, and what's one of the great things about working with somebody like Jeff is that Jeff, if you read comic books, is kind of like a comic book writing demigod. I mean, because of, I'm thinking of some of the work that he did in terms of on Batman, like, The Long Halloween and Dark Victory. And then at the same time, also, what is it? Spider-Man Blue, Daredevil Yellow. Like, he's just one of the great comic book writers ever, just in comic books. And then in addition to that, he also, as a staff, was on the writing staff of Heroes, in addition to Lost. So he's one of the rare story people that, yes, is a high-level executive. Well, he's not. You know, he's the Don essentially.
Yeah.
But at the same time, can relate to what you're dealing with as a writer in terms of the writing room process, in terms of trying to translate from a comic book medium to television. And so the thing that he always said to myself and to all of us as showrunners is that basically think of it as a freeway. And when you're driving on the freeway, at least in California, 405, which has so many lanes, you can basically maneuver any way you want. But if you hit a guardrail, you know, what Jeff says is when you hit a guardrail, we'll let you know. Meaning that if you're trying to do something story-wise that's going to affect other stories or is going to affect something else that's happening in the larger quote-unquote universe, then that's when, you know, there'll be a constriction. But pretty much anything else you want to do, you can do. And so the way that I try to do it is I always try to make sure that we follow the spirit of the comics, if not the letter of the comics. Because certain things, you know, so for example, like something like Sweet Christmas, it's like, the catchphrase is like 45 years old. And so there was like, are we gonna use that? Are we gonna use Sweet Sister? Are we gonna use stuff from the comics? So we basically embraced, you know, the comics, blaxploitation elements, but we updated, you know, a lot of things. So the Luke Cage that we have in our show is different than the Luke in the comics. The Black Mariah, or Mariah Dillard character from the comics, is very different with what we do with Alfred Woodard. Cottonmouth is different, but you know, but at the same time, it's recognizable. And so that's the thing, is like you really just try to make it work, but also just really respect the material. I mean, really, the biggest influence on me for that was what Peter Jackson did with Lord of the Rings, because if you read, you know, the books, I mean, there were like the frustration with reading Tolkien was like every 35 pages you have 10 pages of songs, people singing, you know, or you have entire characters that didn't even make the cut. But because he got the Shire right, and because he got the world right, he was able to, you know, take even bits of the Silmarillion and pull it up and do all these different things that people now, if they're not going back to the books, just feel like is a cohesive part of Tolkien. So as long as you respect the universe, the fictional universe that you're writing in, you can get away with a lot. But what you don't want to do is violate the feel in such a way that it just feels wrong, you know.
Great. Thank you so much. This is fantastic.